Hi, I'm Eric Davidson. I am one of the City Councilmen here in Midland, Texas, Senior Director at Select Chemistry, father of two, husband, and been in Midland since 2017. And I'm excited to be a guest this week on the Catwalk.
The Catwalk is proud to partner with Second Story Co-working and the Second Story Studio in downtown Midland. Second Story Co-working provides fully furnished offices, open workspace, and multiple conference rooms for your business. Consider Second Story Co-working today. Check them out at secondstory.co. Inspire, create, and produce with the Catwalk Media Group. Check us out at catwalkmediagroup.com. Well, it is exciting to be back with you for another week of the Catwalk. Sitting across from me is Chris on the controls, mourning the loss of James Earl Jones today, of the great movie Star Wars and other great movies, The Sandlot. And I'm your host, Jay Whitlow, and I am so glad to welcome my good friend, Councilman Eric Davidson. Hey, Eric, what's up?
Nothing much, Jay. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome to the Catwalk. You're probably walking on cloud nine right now after that big Texas thrashing of Michigan, right?
It feels pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. I had this past Saturday was really enjoyable day. Got to wake up, hang out with the kids for a little while. I did the stair climb at Astound Stadium for the Memorial Stair Climb, and then directly after that, I went home and I watched just that shellacking that Texas gave Michigan before kind of continuing the rest of my day, going to some soccer games. Immediately threw on some UT gear. And about for the last 3 days, me, my kids, and my wife have all just been repping the burnt orange and white.
Yeah.
So,
Now, are you all in when it comes to Texas? Like on game days, you got to wear the gear all the time?
no, not at all.
Not at all.
I enjoy football, enjoy sports. It really depends what we got going on the schedule, right? So if the soccer games, are going to be interfering, I might be wearing the soccer jersey for my kids instead. So it just really depends. But for that Michigan game, I mean, we're on College game day. You got to be repping it. So
That's right. That's right. Well, I was driving in today and heard about the loss of James Earl Jones and immediately went Star Wars. Chris told me today about Sandlot. You got any big James Earl Jones movies that you know of or that you like?
So Sandlot's going to be my reference there.
Really?
Against my wife's better judgment, I actually introduced Sandlot to my son at 5. I think he had just turned 5 because we were doing our first season of T-ball, and that was like my movie growing up as a kid. And so he got to watch that, and then that entire summer he's like, I want to watch The Beast, and I'm like, let's do it, dude. Like we're gonna sit here, we're gonna watch that. He was asking a lot of questions when the kids were throwing up on the spinning wheel. We got around that. A little grenade right there, and then my daughter just started watching it this past year. She's 5, and so I watched Sandlot a lot growing up.
I love the Patriot Games is one of my favorite movies from James Earl Jones. Yeah, when he was in the Tom Clancy movies. So hey, I wanted to, before we jump in, a lot of our viewers and listeners may not know much about you, but I wanted to jump in because I think you have an incredibly cool title at your job. So I pulled this off of your bio.
Okay.
And you are a geologist and a hydrologist. Is that correct?
It's pretty close.
Pretty close?
Pretty
Okay.
close.
So help me with what your title is, because I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I got my degree in geosystems engineering and hydrogeology.
Okay.
And then I got my minor in business. And it's one of those. I was actually just talking to some people about it the other day because they're asking me, what big passions are, and I like rocks and I like water, and that's kind of a convolution of them all. Yeah. I went into college thinking I wanted to do petroleum engineering. I decided to pivot over to be a geologist because I was going to be a third-generation geologist. I thought, that'd be amazing, and I just enjoyed rocks growing up. And then, I quickly realized I wanted to go back into engineering, but I really liked the water side. And so this was just kind of the perfect combination of my first 3 degrees. So
wow. So you liked rocks growing up. Was there something that happened when you were small that made you fall in love with rocks, or?
I mean, I might have gotten hit by a couple rocks growing up, but it was just one of those. Like I said, my dad is a geologist, my uncle's a geologist, my grandpa's a geologist, so I was just around geology and really rock mineralogy growing up all the time. And, for some of those oil and gas nerds, when I was a kid, my dad would hand me a bunch of logs, and he'd point out a sand, and he'd tell me just to start coloring that sand on all these logs, and he'd have me do that for fun. And so I just really enjoy geology, enjoy rocks, and it just really grew as I got older. I think when I was, I think I was 13 or 14. No, maybe 12. My parents got me a rock polisher.
Nice.
Down
For Christmas?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
And
that's
so
awesome.
yeah, I'd polish my own rocks that I'd find, and then there was actually a rock shop, a really nice rock and mineral shop, just down the road from us. And so when I lived on the coast originally, if I got once I got a report card, if I got straight A's, my mom would buy me some squid, and I can go fishing with the squid. And as I got older, we moved to the hill country, and report card was straight A's. She'd let me go down the rock shop and go pick out a few things. So that was my reward, was going to go buy a rock.
Wow. Okay. There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
So I want to get back to the rock thing, but you're from the coast.
Yeah, so I was born in Corpus Christi.
Okay.
Yeah, so born in Corpus Christi, went to elementary school in Portland, a little town called Gregory, Portland, just north on the other side of Bay from Corpus Christi. That's where my dad was originally from there. My mom was from Port Aransas, there on the island. And so we lived there up until, kind of middle school days. And so we decided to move up to the hill country. My family did, and moved up to Bernie. And that's, when I really started getting that rock bug, is whenever I got up to the hill country and just seen the hills, going in the creeks. There's just limestone everywhere. So going back to your original question, I guess that happened at 11 is whenever I got that rock bug.
You got that rock.
Yeah, and just started seeing all that limestone in these creeks, and like my dad would just let me pick up everything, play with it, and it's
I just remember when I would go on like a vacation.
Yeah.
Or something, we would go into New Mexico, or we'd go somewhere up into like Amarillo area or whatever. We went even to Arkansas a couple times, and I threw a fit when I was little because my dad would not let me buy rocks from the rock shop. And so here you are living my dream of being able to buy those, because I would go in there and I would handle all the rocks that were in there, and I was like, this is granite, and this is turquoise, and this is whatever. And he was like, put all that down. And I'm like, oh my goodness! And he worked for Mobil Oil for a number of years.
You got to encourage
he's
that.
going to push me toward rocks or whatever. But yeah, he never would let me do that. So it was kind of you're living my childhood dream now of being able to buy all these rocks and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But okay, so water. Tell me about the water side. So I know the rock side.
Yeah.
Tell me about the water side. Have you ever? Do you look down into the ground to find water? Is that part of what your role is?
So that's not really part of what my role is at my company. I'm a little bit more on the chemistry side. So 50% of my time is really spent on the upstream chemistry. So chemical manufacturing is kind of what our company does here in Basin, especially like a polyacrylamides, and reacting to polyacrylamides is kind of our biggest bread and butter. But as far as the water side, that was just something I really just started recognizing in, college is, I enjoyed geology, I enjoyed oil and gas, I enjoyed engineering. But, what is something that's, more impactful for people around me? And that's whenever I kind of found this degree, and it was kind of a hybrid of oil, gas, and water. And it kind of fit that geology bug, it fit that engineering bug, and it kind of fit that water bug of, being able to provide water for people and design water fields, and, just really encompass all that.
Oil and water doesn't mix.
It doesn't mix, but
somehow you make it mix.
But we produce a lot of water. Yeah. So there's some really big water wells that produce some oil out here, right? So we got to figure out something to do with that.
Well, I was going to ask you, because of your history with water, if you have ever used a divining rod to find the water. But if that's not in your role, then I guess maybe you haven't. But if you've had the rock bug, have you ever used a divining rod or anything like that to find water?
No, can't say I have. I do have it used to be in a shadow box where I put my favorite rocks and minerals, so everybody could see them, because who wouldn't want to see that on a wall? But yeah, I have a rock collection, a mineral collection, a fossil collection. Since I've gotten married, it's no longer a showcase of our apartment we lived in. It's definitely not a showcase of the house.
Go figure.
Yeah. I'm just now, we're kind of changing up our house that we moved into about 2 years ago, and I'm finally going to get my spot that I can put my rocks on the wall.
What's your favorite rock?
So it just really depends. Right now, Unikite is something that just really... I really just like the color. It's a metamorphic form of granite almost. And so you get some really good feldspars that come through and some obsidians, and it's got a nice look to it. And so I also enjoy like collecting like some rare rocks that don't really have any value, but they're rare, a lot rarer than a diamond will ever be or anything like that. So like a petersite is something. I have a petersite necklace. It's only found in like 1 or 2 countries in the world. Namibia is going to be one of them, and yeah, and it's extremely rare. There's only one active mine that has it, but nobody wants it, so throw it in Davidson's collection.
Does your job take you outside of Midland? I mean, do you travel some out of the country or?
Out of country, no, not at all. Out of Midland, kind of in my new role, not so much. I if I had to really put a number on it, I'd say about 5% of time might be traveling. In my previous role, I was on a bunch of different sides of the basin. So, office in Garden City or head out to Orla or different areas like that, but didn't really have to, really leave the state.
Right.
So, but yeah, I'd say about, 5% of out of Midland travel now with my new role.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned your wife and you mentioned your kids, so let's go back there. How did you guys meet, and kind of walk me through that journey up into kids?
So it's a wandering journey there. So we actually met when we were 11 years old. So we lived
Collecting rocks?
Not collecting rocks. She could care less about rocks. I went back to the rocks got taken off the wall once we got married. And so I'd say, when we were 11 years old, that's when we met for the first time. Our parents lived about 3 streets. Yeah, it was 3 streets, maybe 4 streets away from each other, but we're 2 golf holes away from each other. So, I was near the number 3 tee, and she was kind of near the 4 green. So, just under two golf holes away from each other. And so, we met each other when we were 11. I was immediately smitten. She could care less. And it took a while. Our moms knew each other. So they were in a prayer group with one another. They go on walks with each other. And finally, when I was 17 and driving, there's a couple times I had to drive her to school. She broke her arm. I think she broke her leg at one point, so I had to drive her to school for that. And so we just kind of got closer to each other. And then, we finally started dating when we were 18. So, yeah.
So you drove her around when she had broken arms,
broken leg,
and stuff like that.
Wasn't me. Yeah.
Far cry from me. I met my wife and broke her ribs. It was my fault.
Oh man.
Yeah. So you were the Prince Charming driving her around everywhere and stuff. Yeah. Now, did you show off your golf skills, teeing off near her home and stuff? I mean, did you break a window with a golf ball or
Never
anything?
broke her window, but every time I'd walk by that house, I'd always just look in. Maybe she's going to be on the porch. Maybe she'll just watch me stick this one on the green. It never happened.
Yeah.
I think she played her first round with me, I think, after we've been dating for like a year or 2.
Yeah.
She's just now thinking about getting into golf. So, a little bit after since we met when we were 18 years old, but it's been one. She used to walk with me and kind of hang out, and it was fun. So
Yeah. How'd you propose?
So she says there's 2 proposals.
Uh-oh.
I say there's 1. So in her mind, the fake.
Give me hers.
Yeah. So the fake proposal was the first proposal apparently.
Yeah.
So after I graduated college, I took a job up in West Virginia, and so I was in northern West Virginia. Just outside of Morgantown, West Virginia. So that's where WVU's at, pretty close to Pittsburgh. Just beautiful, absolutely beautiful country. And I'd been living up there for a couple months, and I'd been talking with my college pastor a little bit, and we'd been talking about marriage, talking about different things, because at that time, I noticed since we're 18. At this point, I'm 22, she's 21. And so I was up there, and, he really encouraged me. He's like, well, you might want to make sure that she likes West Virginia first, That's probably a good first step. Right. And so I'd been up there a couple months, and I flew her up there. I was a single guy, field engineer. I'm like, let me just fly her up here. You'll come for the weekend. I put out all the red carpet. We went to the nice pizza shop. I had the hikes planned. I had everything planned. I think we started in Pittsburgh, and I even picked her up at the airport. We did Pittsburgh for half a day before coming down to Morgantown. And the second day, we went hiking in one of the parks, and just it's a really easy hike, a 45-minute hike to this beautiful overlook that looks over the Monongahela River, and just beautiful forest canyons, and there's a great outcrop right there. And so I took her out there. She was all excited. Unbeknownst to me, she had told all of her roommates, like, oh, he's proposing this weekend. This is happening. That, like, it's going down. So apparently she got a fresh manicure. Like, her fingers were apparently looking fantastic for a ring to get thrown on there. And we finished this hike at the Overlook, and I really enjoy, like, just being spontaneous sometimes. Sure. And so I took a camera out, and I'm like, you know what, like, I'm going to put her here because it's like this beautiful spot. She'll have, like, I'm going to tell her to close her eyes, and then she's going to open her eyes, and she's just going to see this majestic nature. And I'm going to take her picture. It's going to be great. And so I told her to close her eyes, and then I told her to open her eyes. And then I'm like, smile, and I took her picture. And she didn't really talk to me. And I'm like, man, what did I do? Like, okay, something must be going on. She's probably thinking about her dad. I don't know. Yeah. And so we hiked down. We hiked down in pretty much silence for 45 minutes. I was trying to make conversation. She was kind of being short. We go to the great little pizza place I chose for dinner. She's not really. And like halfway through the dinner, I'm like, hey, like, what's going on? Like, there's something stewing in there. I need to know. And that's whenever she's like, well, I just can't believe you would fake propose to me like that. And I'm like, whoa, what are you talking about? At what point could you have ever gotten confused here? And then she kind of explained it, and I'm like, well, I still don't see it, but okay. So we laughed about it, and, we got over it, but, to this day, she still talks about the fake proposal, and then all the women that she meets, she's like, why would you do that to her? And I'm like, I didn't know. I was trying to make just an innocent memory, and a smile overlooking nature. The real proposal happened. Oh gosh, it had to be like 6 weeks, 8 weeks after that. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't long, right? I was in training down in Houston for my job. I was actually down there for 6 weeks, and at the beginning of the 6 weeks, I bought the ring and I picked it up at the second half of the 6 weeks, and so I ended up proposing to her I think it was that last weekend. And I would have done it sooner, but her dad was dodging me. Like, I would try to, I would try to get him, like, hey, I'll day trip it to Bernie, and I need to just come talk to you. Yeah. And he's like, I'm going hunting this week, and it's not really going to work with my schedule. I'm like, well, I'll go down to Catula. I'll go meet you. And he's like, yeah, you're not allowed on the ranch. You're not family. You're not allowed down here, Eric. And I'm like, and I just kept talking to people. I'm like, he's avoiding me. Like, he knows what I'm going to ask. There's no way he doesn't know. And so it was like that last weekend I was going to be down there, and Arkansas was playing A&M in Dallas. And my brother-in-law was going to Arkansas at the time. My father-in-law played quarterback at A&M back in the late 70s, early 80s. Okay. And so just kind of a big dynamic. So they're all going, and my brother-in-law is like, hey, Eric, if I give you an Arkansas shirt, will you come to the game with me? And I'm like, oh, definitely. I will go root against the Aggies. Yeah. And then I'm like, and now I'm going to be able to corner her dad. He doesn't suspect I'm coming. There's no way he's going to avoid me now. He waited till the last day at our lunch before we left, before he let me talk to him. But he, of course, said yes and told me he was just trying to, make me earn it, is what he said. But I ended up proposing to her in Houston that at the end of the week. Yeah. She came over from Austin and proposed to her in my aunt and uncle's backyard.
Awesome. So y'all been married how long now?
We've been married, 9 years, coming up on 10.
9, and you've got almost 10 years, and you've got two kids?
We have 2 biological kids, yes.
And you have foster kids or adopted kids?
So we do fostering. So our biological kids are 6 and 5 right now. So our recent placement we had, so those 2 twins, we got them when they were 3, and then they ended up getting moved to a different district. And so they're 4 whenever they got moved to some different people. So,
right. Well, I know one of the things I want to talk about is being councilman and what led to that decision. Not everybody wakes up one day and says, hey, I'm going to run for city council. But before we do that, I want to jump over to a couple things that I appreciate about you. Yeah. One is you are big in volunteering in the community. Mm-hmm. I know you work with Carl Borowski and Rope Youth. What do you do for him? Yeah,
so I actually met Carl because I bought a dog from him back when you're allowed to buy dogs on Craigslist. It's no longer a thing. You can't do it. And
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah. And so we lived in West Virginia, and we really wanted a dog when we were getting transferred down here. And, my grandpa always had boxers. I love my grandpa. And so as a child, just have fond memories of being around boxers all the time. I'm like, let's get a boxer. My wife's like, okay, yeah, let's do it. That sounds awesome. She just wanted a dog. She'd been wanting a dog since she was 16. And her parents never let her. And so we went on Craigslist. We found a guy in Midland that had boxer puppies. We looked at the pictures. We're like, these are great. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to be down there next week. I'll come pick out a dog. And so I did. I went and picked out the dog that we chose. I purely picked her out because she was very uniform in the way her spots were. And that was, to me, it's like, okay, you got to have a pattern. You got to be uniform. This is perfect. And then I went back to West Virginia, and I got a phone call from the Carl guy. And he's like, hey, man, can you send me some PayPal money? And I'm like, what? I'm like, hey, I'm in West Virginia. He's like, just send it on PayPal, man. It's fine. And I'm like, I don't know you. Like, I'm not just going to send you money.
Right.
Like, I'm in West Virginia. I'll be coming down like in a week. I can give you cash. And he's like, you're in West Virginia. He's like, you ever heard of Yingling? And I'm like, I love Yingling. He's like, get a 30-pack of Yingling, take a picture, and that's your deposit for the dog. And he's like, bring me some Yingling, because he's from Pittsburgh.
Right.
And so that's before it was distributed down here. So that's what I did. Got down there, got the dog, handed him the money and the beer, and I've known him ever since. But yeah, kind of going back to Carl. So known Carl for years since I've been down here, and it was one of those. He kind of had been talking to me about his different nonprofits. On different things. I've always been an extreme advocate, kind of going back to, I got pushed to this when I was probably 19 or 20 by my college pastor, is wherever you are, like, put your feet there and get involved.
Yeah.
You can't think about where God wants you 5 years down the road. God's put you here for a reason, and you need to invest your time in the community that you're put in, and find the most at-risk people and try to make a difference there. And so that's when kind of talking to Carl, and then learning about Rope Youth and learning how you really trying to help out kind of this younger generation of Midlanders that, come from a low socioeconomical background, come from normally a single parent household, and they're just highly at risk. And that just really just fit into the philosophy of like everything my family was about when it comes to foster care, when it comes to teaching Sunday school, when it just fit everything. And so that was kind of like my first foray into working with Carl was at Rope Youth. So we actually are starting next week with our boys. So they are going to be in the 5th grade. So there should be 8 or 9 of them. And so just really excited. Been able to just build bonds with them, build some trust, because that's the biggest thing, is just having a male figure in their life that they can trust and rely on, and they'll listen to them, right? And so it's just amazing to see, how one person from Pittsburgh, especially with his background, right, years being homeless, and then comes down to Midland and is just making a huge impact for the gospel here in this town, and just changing the next generation of kids.
I did not know that story. That's a great story, how you guys met. I know that you have recently gone out with him on like a Saturday or Sunday and did some feeding with some of our homeless friends. And just this summer, we kind of had a dual ministry serving opportunity. Yeah. We were scheduled to serve in the food truck at the same time. And we took one truck, and your team took another truck, and we served. We doubled up. It was probably one of the largest weeks they've had with 2 of those together. What does it mean to you, at father, husband, leader at your company, leader at your church? You're heavily involved in the community, volunteer. What does it mean to you to teach others to serve?
Yeah. Ultimately, it's what Jesus told us to do, right? Is, be there for the widows, be there for the orphans. And that's, kind of the mantra for our lives. And it's one of those things that, I've been blessed to be around a lot of people that are making a huge impact in their community, and just being able to just really just piggyback off of their success, the foundations they've laid, and just being able to just work with them, work with their nonprofits. Carl has so many things that he does. It's, I think I have a busy life sometimes, and I look at Carl and he's like, hey man, it's, Sunday, let's go feed some homeless people. Or, hey, let's go shower some homeless people. Oh, hey, I'm going to go cook all week for, kids this summer. Let's go do that. And it's just the ideas that just, he just takes it and runs with it. He just started a new one with David Parkhurst, which I don't know if you met him. And so I do rope youth with him. And so they partnered on a new one. So the Graybeard Club, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with that yet.
I am, yeah.
And so this, I was able to go for the first time, and it's really going to a nursing home here in town and just trying to be there for some guys that don't have anybody else, that are later in life that, don't really have family, don't have anybody to interact with, and just going there once a week and just trying to pour into them and talk to them about life and just hear their story, right? Everybody has a story. And one of the most beautiful things you can do is whenever you gain somebody's trust to learn about their story, learn about the impact, learn about their struggles and what you can learn from that. And that's something that I just constantly am trying to do in my life.
You're a champion for foster care. Briefly talk to me about that journey. Was that something that you brought to the relationship? Did you and your wife both want to do that? And where do you land on encouraging others to be foster parents?
Yeah. So that was something that I kind of brought into our relationship. I had a little bit of a rough childhood, just with deaths and alcohol, and a lot of other things. Was just kind of there's a lot of trauma there, and so I had my own struggles in life, right? And that was one of the things whenever I refocused myself on God and refocused myself on what the gospel truth means to me. Identified I have a gift of being able to teach kids, right? Not everybody has the patience, to be able to hang out with some 3-year-olds or 4-year-olds and, be able to kind of break down that wall of imparting some gospel truth in them. I've noticed I have that gift of just being able to be around them, to listen. And so I identified that in college and started serving in the kids ministry at our church in college. I was looking back, they're like, hey, 21-year-old dude, yeah, go in there with the 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and 5-year-olds. You got this. And so my wife's a children's director at our church, and so she's been in the children's side of ministry for a while, and that's frowned upon. Definitely now is just throw some 21-year-old with a bunch of kids and say you got it.
Right.
But it took that for me to realize, okay, this is my gift. And so whenever we're dating, I kind of brought it up. When we're engaged, I brought it up. When we were married, I brought it up, and we had long conversations about when we want to start kids. And I'm like, love to foster. And my wife's like, well, I might be open to adoption. And it wasn't until we moved to Midland. We had our first 2 kids. So we moved to Midland, got a house, and got pregnant in the first week. Oh, we got the puppy as well. So, house, puppy, pregnant, first week, got that check mark, we're done. And then our son was about 4 months old, and then I found out my wife was pregnant again. So our kids were born pretty fast as moving to Midland. And, kind of through the pregnancies, we realized hey, we're not going to be able to go through the pregnancy again. I still have a lot of love I know that I can provide. Let's have a conversation. And so it just kind of took a lot of talking, and then finally we had a sermon on just talking about abortion, talking about what it means to care for widows and orphans. And our pastor ultimately challenged everybody. He's like, this is a town that does so much, but we got to start putting our money where our mouth is when it comes to taking care of kids in this town. It is this region has a problem. There's an epidemic of just kids that need a home in this region, and as a church, we need to start filling that. And so from there, we worked with High Sky Children's Ranch. They offered up an opportunity to say, hey, we can fast track people, whether you want to do babysitting, whether you want to do respite care, whether you want to do foster or foster adoption. We'll work with y'all on a schedule. We'll come up with nights y'all come. And, what took, a lot of people it takes 4 to 6 months to get certified. We're certified in 4 weeks, 5 weeks, because we were just taking so many classes. And they'd block out an entire Saturday, offer babysitters, and then we'd just be taking classes for 6 or 8 hours on a Saturday. And
you fostered how many kids now?
So we've had 3 different kids that have been in our house. Yeah.
At the same time of your other
No.
Okay, but just 3 over.
3, yeah, three overall. We had the twins. They're with us during the campaign process when I was running for city council. They were with us for the entire school year. They're with us through the summer, and like I said, they just recently left. and it's one of those things we're reevaluating as a family what that means for us, right? Because our kids are kind of starting to ask some really tough questions. But we know we can get through all this with God, and it's kind of one of those standpoints of when do we feel like God's preparing us to go again, right? Yeah. And so we're doing a little bit of babysitting for some friends that are in the foster care that have foster kids, just because you have to be certified. It's hard to find babysitters. So we're doing babysitting, potentially doing some respite care, which just means watching kids overnight, and then eventually talking about what a new placement might mean. So.
Well, you talked about running.
Yeah.
I've known you for a while now, and met you at a event for a homeless meeting.
Homeless and Young Youth Coalition.
Youth Coalition that Carl puts on.
Yeah.
And that's where we became friends and got to know each other and stuff. But I've seen you before you were a councilman, and then while you were running. Yeah. We ran into each other in my neighborhood. You were out canvassing and stuff. So tell me, what led to you wanting to run? Like I said earlier in the show, you don't just wake up one day and go, hey, I'm going to run. Or is this something that you've wanted to do growing up and you wanted to pursue?
I'll answer the second half of that question. I never imagined myself ever getting into politics, whether it's at a city level, a state level, a national level. That was never on the Davidson bingo card. That was something, even going through marriage counseling. My wife, we're talking, okay, with our pastor, okay, so premarital counseling. What are some hard no's you think are going to be there in the marriage? And my wife immediately said no politics. And I'm like, not a problem. That's not going to be an issue there, right? And so we kind of had the back and forth, and it was one of those that that was never on the top of my mind. It's actually kind of a running joke in my house, but I think in high school and college, I think I ran for 4 offices, maybe 5. I can't remember if it was 4 or 5, but I lost them all. So I think I was 0 for 4 or 0 for 5 going into this city council. And so it was one of those that was had nothing to do for politics side. It was, I think, my first election I ever did. I tried to be president of the bass club at my high school.
Yeah.
I lost that election.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, we need a vice president. I'm like, I'll do it. And then somebody else ran against me, and I lost that. And then they're like, well, you can be the treasurer. I'm like, I don't want to be the treasurer. No interest. And they're like, no, you're the treasurer. Here's the information. You got to, I think I was 16 or 17. They're like, you got to open a bank account. You got to do this. I'm like, come on. Needless to say, the Bernie High School Bass Pro team, our bass fishing team, got off to a pretty rough start.
Rocky
start?
Yeah, would you say rocky?
Very rocky start, especially when it came to finances and sponsorships. But yeah, so it was never won an election. And what ultimately led me kind of down the path of trying to want to go into city council is when I was really involved in my community in Austin. I was really involved in my community in West Virginia. I got encouraged so I was in a Christian fraternity called Bucks in college, and I got encouraged by one of the leaders of Bucks, because we're talking about getting discipled, what that might look like. How do you get discipled? And he's like, man, I just go to a church. I go there a couple times, and I find some old dude with gray hair, and I make sure he's, gives me some sound gospel wisdom, and then I'll ask him to disciple me. And he's like, people aren't going to say no if you ask them to. They're going to be shell-shocked to hear that blatant. They'll be like, oh, sure, why not? So I took that same mentality. So I was getting discipled in Austin. I was getting discipled by a man in West Virginia. And he really, Ed, he really, was encouraging me to get really involved, whether it was with my church, get involved with the small group. So when we came to Midland, it was, okay, we got to get involved in the church. And so we got involved with Redeemer Midland, just immediately moving here.
Right.
I saw some college buddies I knew, and they're going to Redeemer, and I met 3 of them. They're all going to Redeemer. Like, all right, we're going to Redeemer. Obviously that's where we need to be. And then kind of moved that into, where can we start we had kids. Once our kids started getting a little older, okay, where can we start impacting our community? My wife ended up starting work at First Baptist for their Children's Day Out program. And then I started getting, really involved in the kids ministry at church, started getting really involved with some different nonprofits here in town. And local government in general was never something I was about how do I grow the gospel where I'm living and how do I get involved? And so it was never about, how do I get involved with the government? And it wasn't until kind of COVID that I started seeing, wait a second. It kind of depends who you got in office on, what rules, what regulations you have. It didn't click until, I'm 29 and I'm seeing it. I'm like, wait, I'm starting to see something here. Luckily, we had some really good local leaders that really carried us through COVID in that period. And then and that's when I'm like, okay, I really need to start paying more attention to politics, especially with kids growing up where we live. And then, you throw a couple years after that, local politics wasn't something I was really paying much attention to. And then all of a sudden there's a few things I strongly disagreed with that happened here in town, especially in the vicinity of where our church is going to be. And me and my wife were like, why would they do that? This makes no sense. And then that's whenever we realized, the local government has, there's such a magnitude of impact you can have from a local government. And, at that point, I started realizing, I want to start getting more involved here in Midland, outside of working with nonprofits, maybe getting more involved in the city government side, not running, just get involved. And then, that's whenever Councilman Corrales ended up passing away. And so I'd taken a leadership class with our former mayor, Patrick Payton, with a few other men here in town, just basically talking about, how do you be a strong leader in town? How do you be a strong leader in this community? And, just came out of that with just a tug, just basically saying, okay, you should get more involved. And then didn't really agree with the platforms of the 4 other people that had decided to run for city council. And at that point, me and my wife were talking, and we're like, we've always gone to the mantra of, why not us? And, ultimately, if I didn't, we didn't agree that this was, the best path moving forward for the city, the best path moving forward to, have somebody in that seat that wants to care for this community, that wants to help grow, that wants to make, decisions that are going to impact that next generation of Midlanders and provide quality of life in place for that next generation. Why not us? And so that's when I'm like, you know what? I'm going to have some conversations. I think I filed, 2 days before the deadline. And, just hit the ground running, right?
Not?
Why not? Why not us? And so that was that long conversation. That's when my wife's like, you know what? I'm all in. Like, this is what I want for my kids. This is what I want to see, the city continue to grow. I don't want us to take a step back.
Right.
And so that's whenever, I decided, at 32 to
jump in. Why?
Let's just
why
jump
not?
in. Why not?
Well, I know that I'm always fascinated by people who jump into the political arena. So you've been able to see Midland from 2 sets of eyes now, just as a normal, regular Joe, being here and working and being involved in T-ball and coaching and fostering and serving and volunteering. Now you have the eyes of seeing it from the inside, the city council, you see the government and stuff. And not to get into any kind of platform building or campaign or anything, but what do you see from both sides now? What does Midland do well? What's the one thing Midland does the best?
Midland cares. That's something I've seen. We have just some amazing leaders here in town, whether that's from the city level, whether that's from the philanthropy level, whether that's from the nonprofit level. We have a community that wants to reinvest in itself. They want to reinvest for the betterment of the next generation. They want to reinvest, to spread the gospel here in this town. They want to reinvest to be able to provide a better life for these kids, for, at-risk adults. They truly just care. And whenever I start thinking about Midland, one of the things that always shocks me is just that entrepreneurial spirit. This was a wildcatter town. Like I said, I was third generation I was going to be a third generation geologist. Grandpa, uncle, and dad were all explorational geologists. They had that wildcatter spirit of being able to go find something. And I think that spirit we have in this town of just being willing to take risks, and then that risk and then being able to focus that on, what do you truly care about, but still bring that same attitude, that same I'm going all in, we're going to do this no matter what spirit, is just leading to just some amazing projects that we're starting to see in town. And it's just, I feel like just shifting the dynamic and the culture of this city.
When you go to a city council meeting, you walk in, you sit down, you've got your agenda, you're ready to go. I asked the mayor this. I'm going to ask you this. Do you have a walk-up song that they play when Eric walks up and sits down in that chair?
So I definitely get a little hyped kind of going into, music's, I love how music can affect you.
Yeah.
Right. And so one of the things that I enjoy listening to, especially in the car and then sitting in the parking lot, is Oceans by Hillsong United.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because you just get that build, and it just keeps building and building and building.
Is that kind of your hype song?
And that's my hype song. Is just
that's awesome.
She just keeps building that voice in that song, and the instruments just keep getting louder, and it just kind of also resets my heart, it resets my whole attitude of, okay, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
You know, I'm not doing this for Eric. I'm doing this for the citizens of Midland. I'm doing this for my family. I'm doing this for the glorification of God. And it just really helps me refocus, and it gets me hyped.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate everything you do for the community, for your serving. I know you've got campaigning going on. Yeah. You've got election coming up, and so we wish you well on that. But I want to wrap things up and ask you just kind of final two questions, just briefly. Tell me, who gets to – we're sitting at this table and we're talking, and I think it's important that we guard who we listen to. Who is it that you allow to pour into you? You mentioned the mentoring in your life, but who would that one person be maybe that just pours into you?
It's kind of hard to narrow it down to one, isn't it, there?
The old man with gray hair.
Yeah, there's definitely an old man with gray hair here in town. One of our pastors at church does a phenomenal job of just pouring into me and pouring into my wife. That's something that I feel, you have to check yourself every once in a while. You have to make sure that you're getting your tank filled up. And so just, there's a long list of, men that have mentored me over the years. I love my dad. He's providing a lot for me, and just being able to fill me up with truth. But having that one person that you can go to, and just be able to help fill your cup back up so you can keep going, is something that, that I'm thankful for in my life for him.
Yeah.
So.
What do you want to be known for?
That's a great question. Ultimately, I just want to be known as a servant leader. One of the things I've always kind of gone back to is 7 Habits of a Highly Effective Leader. I'm sure you've probably read that.
Yeah.
And so, talking about seek first to understand, and then to be understood. So seek first to understand. And so that's something I've really tried to take into the city council. And, just being known as a servant leader for this community is more than enough. I don't need my name anywhere. I'm not looking, I don't know how long I'm going to be a city councilman. But as long as I'm going to be a city councilman, I want to be known as someone that's willing to sacrifice their time, for the betterment of this community. I always really go back to my grandpa. He was someone I just truly respected. And there was so much about his life that I didn't know until he passed away, because he was just extremely humble about everything. And so at his funeral, we had 4 generations of people there. I helped speak at the funeral, and just hearing the stories, one of the pastors at the church talking about everything that my grandpa did to help build this church that none of us ever knew about. Learned about from my cousins and uncles about the things that he did in their lives, the thing that he did for their parents that nobody ever knew about, and the way that he sacrificed himself for everybody else around him and never received any credit for it. And just being able to see that and just see how much love that resulted in has just completely changed the way that I really want to be focused on my life. I want at my funeral, the people to be there that have loved me and just seen how much I sacrificed, and they can tell each other what I did. But, while on earth, it's just all about being able to do everything for the glorification of God, not for Eric Davidson.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Appreciate you being away from your family tonight, giving us some time here to talk to to all the catwalkers out there, so appreciate it. So Eric Davidson, everyone, thank you so much for joining with us this week. I want to remind you to like, share, and subscribe. Big shout out to Second Story Studio, this wonderful studio that we're in. We love this partnership that we have with them. If you're looking for a office space or some production, video production, anything, reach out to the Catwalk Media Group, reach out to Second Story. Again, thank you for joining with us, and we will see you all next time.